What's the story, guys? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, we are proudly sponsored by Tidl Sports Recovery Spray, the juggernaut in recovery cryotherapy sports powered sprays. If you want to get recovery, if you want to feel relief, you know when you find something and you want to let everybody know how good it is, when it comes to pain, this is the game changer. Cryotherapy CBD, spray it into your ankle, your knee, your back, your elbow, whatever it is. All you got to do is go to tidlsport.com. Check it out. Tell them Marcus sent you. Grab yourself a couple of bottles of these. It'll change your life, I guarantee it. We are proudly sponsored by another Aussie brand, the Aussie Project meat pies. Aussie Project. Now, it's an authentic meat pie company. It's made here in Australia, and we brought it to America, and we wanted to introduce the Americans to some Australian cuisine. So check out the Aussie Project. We are doing free delivery here in Las Vegas. Let them know that Marcus sent you. And, of course, as always, today's episode is proudly fueled by...
In Ireland, the highest form of compliment in any pub is an insult. So I'm considered quite complimentary. Proper No.12 Irish Whiskey.
Hello, world. Welcome to the podcast. Marcus Deegan from the What Happens Here show, shooting live from Sin City, Las Vegas. I am so pumped to be here. It's Monday. It's 12:15. I'm having a couple of proper 12s already just to soften the mood up a little bit. Thank you very much for joining us, whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or if you're just tuning in on YouTube so you get to see this amazing studio. Make sure you give it a like, follow, and subscribe. Thanks very much for coming back again. Hey, we got another great interview in the house today. Thanks for last week's interview. Went really well. Everybody loved it. Well, today we are talking to... I love talking to CEOs, the big wigs, the big boss, the man that runs the shit. And today, this man is no exception to the rule. How do you go from a casino boss running the Mandalay Bay to running one of the most lucrative, professional, brand new promotions? When I say brand new, it's about a decade old, but it's smashing the scene here in the United States. It's killing it over in Europe. It's available on... AXS TV, Access TV for those of you that say different to me, CBS Sports Network, and of course it's available on UFC Fight Pass. If you don't know about Muay Thai, then you've got no clue. This is one of the oldest former martial arts combat sports that have been happening since the generation and the beginning of time. But if you don't know what it's about, don't take it from me. Check this. The violence is what we love, and we love to see it. We love to see the skill. And the man that puts all this together, he's here in the studio with me today. Very handsome, dressed nicely. He's got his black jacket on and everything. Would you please welcome the CEO, the big wig, the big boss of Lion Fights Promotions, Mr. Scott Kent.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, sir.
Congratulations on the podcast. Things are going swimmingly, I hear, for you.
Well, things are going pretty good, and I also hear things are going pretty damn well for you. Is it only a decade since this promotion's been going, Scott?
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, we started out in Prim, Nevada, and we brought in, Simon Marcus and Sockman Cole, these world legends. And out to Prim, Nevada, at the Buffalo Bills Star of the Desert Arena, and people had no idea who these guys were. But looking back now, when you go back over that footage, and I think that was really what got us really in the discussion as far as Muay Thai promotions. And then we went to the Hard Rock, and like any small business, you just started to grow, and people started to follow the sport a lot more than they did before. And now we're on the biggest combat sports platform in the world, streaming live around the world on UFC Fight Pass.
Now, that's a really huge jump from working in Buffalo Bills at Prim to being on UFC Fight Pass. What was the vision from the beginning? Was this the vision? Like, did you even expect this to happen?
Well, in all honesty, we didn't know. We started, Christine Toledo was my original partner in Lion Fight back in the day, and we started it. We sat down with Kevin Ross and a couple of fighters, and we actually wrote down on napkins, what would the fighters want to see in a promotion? How do we grow this sport? We could go right to them. And, we just kind of learned as we went. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, like any small business. Yeah. But we surrounded ourselves with people that believed in what we were doing. I was fortunate enough for my previous career to have some investors that were able to take a chance on my vision, which was bringing in international talent. We didn't want to be a local or regional Muay Thai promotion. We wanted to be the biggest and be the best. And I think in any business, you have to start with that premise, or I think you're wasting your time.
Yeah. So let's jump back there. You say your previous employment, you were a big wig in the casino business back here. You were the head guy at the Mandalay Bay, and so how did you go from casino boss to fight promoter?
Well, I was the corporate director for risk management for Mandalay Resort Group. So we had 13 hotels and casinos. So essentially, I was responsible for the risk management of 27,000 hotel rooms a night. So you imagine my phone was busy. And I did that. And then MGM bought Mandalay Resort Group. So I went down to the Fontainebleau in Miami Beach, lived in the Fontainebleau, and was their vice president of security and risk management. And just had an amazing time. And then I came back, and I had one of those, I always say it's one of those Jerry Maguire moments where you just said, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I'd trained Muay Thai for, now over 20-some years. Had trained in Thailand and kind of had this, Jekyll and Hyde personality. I was a casino executive in a suit and tie in the day, and then I would go train Muay Thai at night.
Right, and I bet you none of your employees would have thought that you could have kicked the absolute shit out of them if they didn't show up on time. That's good, the yin and yang. So you were the undercover boss kind of sort of thing. You were the Muay Thai trainer, and you did train in Thailand.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the difference between training Muay Thai in Thailand? Is there a huge difference between training it there and here in America? Like, is the spiritual side of it more in Thailand?
Yeah, I think that's what touched me the most. It's their national sport, and it's been there for centuries. Everybody lives and breathes. You can go down the street and you'll find pickup Muay Thai matches. Every night you can find Muay Thai matches if you want. You can go to one of the major stadiums, or you can go to one of these more local shows. So you'll get people in gyms that fighters from all over the world. Yeah. Top MMA fighters in the world you'll find in these Muay Thai gym because they want to focus on that particular skill. When I went there, you were immersed in the sport, the cultural aspects of it, all of the nuances, which is one of the challenges we have as a promoter of Muay Thai is trying to maintain respect, maintain that tradition, having the fighters seal the ring, and yet there are certain things that we haven't been able to do, the music, the Ramui, things like that maybe more traditional Muay Thai people would like to see more of. But you're on TV, you've got a new audience, and you need to introduce them to the sport gradually.
Are a lot of stars in this sport found in Thailand?
Yeah.
A lot of the up-and-coming athletes in this sport, they're pretty much all. Are they? Would you? Because I know in Holland there is a lot of amazing Dutch kickbox Muay Thai fighters. Actually, I was talking about a couple of them today. Ernest de Hoost, Peter Artes. These guys are from Holland, and yet this sport originates in Thailand. Do they go to Thailand to learn this, or is it just something that generates over the water?
Well, there's different styles. A lot of the Dutch kickboxers have pretty much identified their own sport. Peter Ertz, as you mentioned, Hoost, these guys. I just got a message this weekend from Andy Risty's manager, legendary kickboxer, one of the biggest names there. But what it does is you're taking a sport based out of Thailand, and these different countries essentially are creating their own sport. Kickboxing obviously is different from Muay Thai. Right. You can't just.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because I know there's a lot of listeners that always say, "Oh, it's kickboxing, it's Muay Thai." What's the difference? Can you explain the difference a little bit so people that are listening know what the difference is?
We don't refer to Muay Thai as kickboxing.
Why is that?
Well, because you can't use the elbows.
Right.
In kickboxing, you can't use the elbows. You can't fight in the clinch. Yeah. There are a few technical differences in the sport itself. And I think kickboxing is very popular in Europe. Muay Thai is very popular in Asia.
Yeah.
And we've tried to focus more on the Muay Thai aspect of it. We love the elbows. We love to see when we're watching the UFC, these fighters introduced as Muay Thai fighters. Whether they were or they weren't, they have that, they may have had a couple Muay Thai fights. We may or may not know of them, but they're identifying with that sport. And I think that's important. And I think our job as a promotion is to educate the audience in what the sport's all about. One of the ways we were able to do this, an interesting story, I was having lunch with Dana White, and he was talking about the different sanctioning bodies, WBC, WMC, ... just like boxing. It's a mess. He said, it's all about the brand, Focus on Lion Fight, have your own belts, don't worry about anybody else sanctioning it. This is your brand. This is how you're investing all your money. So when people think about Muay Thai in Europe, they're thinking about Lion Fight, not the WBC champ, the WMC champ. And that was really kind of a fork in the road for our promotion compared to most of the other promotions out there.
Uncle Dana giving advice and helping the everybody else to come along with him. You have a good relationship with Dana White?
Yeah, we stay in touch occasionally. Obviously, he's a superstar. He's a rock star. But, the guy's been there. He's done that. He's always been very good with Las Vegas-based businesses and supporting them. When we came on Fight Pass, it had his blessing.
Wow.
So that means a lot. The guy's a rock star. And I remember, years ago, he came out to Prim. He brought his boys out to our show in Prim, Nevada.
Right. Class act.
And super guy. And, Sean Shelby, all these guys, they come to Mick Maynard. They've been to the Lion Fight shows. And, I'm friends with Antonina, a few of the other, Antonina and Valentina, both MMA stars. So there's a natural relationship there, and it's good for us because they all grew up with Muay Thai, and to be able to bring that to a much broader audience, we can't do it ourselves. We need to get outside of the traditional Muay Thai crowd, and MMA's the biggest avenue out there.
Well, you see a lot of the MMA fighters using a lot of Muay Thai with elbows. Someone like Tony Ferguson. You're seeing a lot of these fighters now using the leg kick, which is just something that's indicative with the Muay Thai fighting. Do you find that it's do you see a sense of pride when you're watching these guys? Like you're like, oh, that's Muay Thai, that's Muay Thai. He watched this guy. He watched this guy.
Yeah. You saw the leg kick with Weidman. That was a low kick, and he checked it. That's how 8 a.m. day one in Thailand, when you're checking kicks, you push the knee out there, which is exactly what he did.
Do you think that the reason why there's these kind of injuries in mixed martial arts from these leg kicks is because they're not as experienced as Muay Thai fighters as checking them? Because leg kicks are such a huge part of Muay Thai fighting. I've seen these guys just bang each other for 20 minutes. Do you think that's would you agree with that? Yeah,
I think there's a learning curve here. Everybody was focusing on the legs, and you saw what happened with Conor McGregor. People, all they need, Muay Thai guys are pulling their hair going out. Just check it. And he's got that wide stance. Just bring the leg up, and after you kick a knee once or twice or the shin, you're not going to do it. And I think in Weidman's case, it was a low kick. It was below the knee. I think
and the shin, more around the shin area.
Yeah. And he put his knee out where it was. He hit it just perfect. He checked it perfect. But that's the downside of those kinds of kicks. If you don't place it on the side of the leg. That's one area where I think from a Muay Thai standpoint, you see so many fighters over the last few years that don't know how to check kicks. Everybody tries to throw a kick, and they're hitting pads, they're kicking heavy bags, and it's one thing in the gym, but when somebody's actually checking that kick, it's a huge deterrent to continue it. And you see these fighters just with the bruised legs and not being able to check a kick. I think that was one of the areas. The other is the elbows, is in a clinch. When you watch a Muay Thai fight, they're throwing
all elbows.
It's all elbows.
Yeah.
And I see these guys, they're so focused on clinching.
And the dirty boxing that they're forgetting the elbows.
They're forgetting the elbows, and they're so devastating to cut somebody open, not just from the judge's perception, the fans' perception, but it affects the fighter's ability to see and what have you. So those are the two areas that I think from a Muay Thai standpoint, we look at MMA and think,
we're a little superior to that. Would you say that?
Well, I think we are, and going right down the line, I think boxers are superior at boxing. I think, MMA fighters, UFC fighters are the most complete fighters all around.
Right.
But in a specialty like that, you're always going to go with the person that has the most training in that particular discipline.
So what do you think about these crossover fights that are happening at the moment? You've got people like Ben Askren that went in and fought Jake Paul last week and viciously got KO'd. Now you've got this man, Jake Paul, who everyone's talking about right now. So fair play to Jake Paul. You've done what you were achieving to do. He does have some kind of skill. He punches hard. He has some good punches. What do you think about these mixed things and these celebrities coming? Do you agree with that? Do you think it's a disrespect to the sport? Or do you think it's something that everyone should... Because, I mean, look, it seems to be getting the numbers. People are interested in it, right?
Well, I watched an interview with Dana the other night, and he was saying, I'd be real skeptical of the numbers that they're talking about.
Yeah.
I think it's a phase. I think, the guy sells himself. Good for him. I don't see him fighting any boxers. I don't see him fighting anybody with any, stand-up really skill. Ben Askren, great MMA fighter, but never known for his boxing. Mm-hmm. And I think you saw at the fight itself just the height disparity. And if you were going to make a fight and you were representing Jake Paul, he's the guy I would have picked.
Yeah.
And I think Dana is right. I think you just let them do their thing. It's, you don't want to become P.T. Barnum and doing these kinds of sideshow things. He takes the sport very seriously. They've built it. They've got the best MMA fighters in the world in the UFC. Yeah. And I think that's what we want to focus on. We've had many opportunities to do cross promotions with kickboxing or MMA. And we said, you know what, we want to be the home of Muay Thai. We're only going to do Muay Thai and focused on those kinds of fighters.
When you watch shows like that with the Ben Askren fight and Jake Paul the other night, and you see the production and you see how things are done, does that make you want to do better with your organization? Like, how far do you guys go with your production and your lighting and your sound and your music? Is it all full on?
Well, it's entertainment. Bottom line is it is entertainment. But you look at a lot of the bells and whistles and, you look at a lot of these promotions over the years that have had these grand, spectacular walk-ins. Most of them are out of business, or most of them have had to scale it back tremendously. People want to see that, but we've always focused on the fight itself. We want people to see Muay Thai. It's great to come out and have a great time. We want the atmosphere to be upbeat now that we're getting fans back. But there is a sideshow element to it that we want to be pure to the sport. If we can add things that don't detract from the fights themselves, we're all over that. But, and from a business standpoint, how much money do you want to spend for video boards? How many do you want to have? Does it really add to the event itself, especially in COVID right now, where you're essentially doing it for the stream itself? It's something we're always evaluating, and it depends on the show. A lot of our shows in Europe, that's very big. So you're going to see a lot of these video walls and things on those shows. Speaking
of COVID, how did that affect the business? I mean, obviously it affected everybody, but as far as your organisation goes, were you able to put on any events at all? Was anything done via stream? And when's everything happening back for you again?
Well, we did. We went to the states where we're allowed to do shows. We did a show in Wyoming. We've done 2 in Kansas. The biggest impact it had is our ability to bring in international fighters. And the Biden administration just extended the ban to the UK. So our last fight...
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, yeah. So Nico Carrillo, who was going to be in the main event on our last show, we weren't able to get him in, so we lost our main event. And it's not just coming into the U.S., but a lot of these countries, like Australia, with the quarantine process that they've got to go back, we're able to get the Canadians in, and we've got a show May 21st. Steve Walker, if you saw the...
Yep, in Kansas City, right?
It's in Topeka, Kansas.
Topeka, Kansas. Okay, yeah, we're gonna put the we're gonna pull the information up for that. Did you get that photo there, Ian? We're gonna put all the information up for that. And if you guys want to get tickets for that, if you want to know any more about it, just go to lionfight.com and you can find out all the information for this event. As you can see there, it's right up on the screen. Is that the one that we're talking about there, brother?
That's it. Steve Walker, who did the tornado kick in the last show. I don't know if anybody saw that. It was a viral.
The
sensation.
tornado kick. Is that the actual name for it?
He spun twice, knocked the guy out, and it was all over everywhere. So it went viral. And, we got the girls. We're always focusing at least one girl fight on every card, and these are badass women. And that's when you start talking about a roster of fighters, we feel we've got the Thais are always going to have the best smaller guys,
right?
But I think
because the Thai people are a smaller breed of people anyway, right?
Generally,
Yeah.
and I think from a standpoint, these guys have been training since they're 6 or 8 years old,
Right.
so they're always going to have a leg up.
Yeah.
But as you start to get into the bigger fighters, like you see in Europe and now in America, we've been able to develop, Chip Pollard, Steve Walker. We've got all of these guys. Jake Peacock, who's the North American champion. We've got a lot of these guys now where I can honestly say Muay Thai in America was never really taken seriously internationally. It is now.
Why wasn't it, do you think?
I don't think there was a promotion that really stood
Right.
out. You had all of these local and regional promotions,
Yeah.
but they didn't develop, it was the business model was let's try and sell some tickets and let's pay for the next show and, wherever.
Yeah.
We've had a vision, and again, I was lucky enough with my investors to be able to look at the international scene because everybody looks at America, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've been able to bring in, John Wayne Parr, we brought in these fighters from Europe, Fabio Pinca, we brought in the top fighters from Thailand, Yodson Klai, and so forth. We've been able to, Enrico Carrera from Italy. So we have a very good representation from around the world on our world champions. And I would put them up against, any sanctioning body or anybody else out there from top to bottom.
Is your shows doing better overseas than they are here in America?
Well, I think the brand has grown so much over there. Fight Pass, the majority of their subscribers are from Europe. So I think when we were talking about doing this deal, they love the fact that we have a brand already established in Europe. I think America is really taking off. You see a lot more Muay Thai gyms opening up. We're getting a lot more interest to do not only lion fight shows, but the Road to Lion fight shows, which we would allow the
Upcoming
local promotion.
people coming up. Wow.
And the winner would get a contract with Lion Fight.
That's a great idea.
We did it in Sicily. We did it in Argentina. And we're going to launch those probably at the end of this year in the United States.
You do a lot of traveling with your job, right?
I have well-weathered Toomey luggage. It's battered, and I've been holed up in hotels and things all over the world. But, I mean...
It's part of the gig, right?
It's a life. I mean, I love what I do. I'm so passionate about it. And, you see these guys. And, same thing for the fighters. You're giving them an opportunity. A lot of these guys have never been out of the state they've grown up in.
Right.
Be able to take them to London and Europe.
Yeah. It's a bonus for them, yeah.
Oh, and that's one of the rewards of this job that I have. Is
so you grew up in England, did you? Or you went to school there?
I went to school at the University of London. I grew up in Montana.
Really?
Yeah.
And what brought you to the UK? How do you go from Montana to London?
Here's another left turn. I was taking Russian classes because back then there was this thing called the Cold War, and I thought, well, I'll get into international diplomacy or international business or something. And then I applied to the University of London, got accepted, went to school there, and then came back and finished at Montana State. And, it was one of those forks in the road where it changes your life.
Well, I mean, my engineer here, my good friend and the owner of this lovely establishment, Mr. Ian Harrington, he is a Brit himself. He's never done Muay Thai a day in his life, but he did spend a little bit of time in the UK. He is sporting his Tidl Sport cryotherapy hat. Ian, have you ever done Muay Thai or any kind of combat sports?
I've eaten Thai. Does that count?
That counts.
That's about it.
That's it. So, are you? Where exactly are you from? Are you from London? You're from Kent? You're not from Kent. No.
I'm from Surrey, Sutton in Surrey, darling, which is the London borough of Sutton. So we're just on the outside edge of the city. But,
see how his accent gets more posh when he starts talking about where he's from. I like it. So Thai food, is it better in Thailand, Scott, or is it better over here?
It's like pizza in Italy. Everybody, think pizza in Italy is great, and it's not. American pizza a lot better, in my opinion.
Right.
I love Thai food here or there, and the fact that you can get it as hot as you want. I mean, how cool is that? Right?
Yeah, I know, right? Are you a married man?
No, I'm single.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm on the road all the time. It's tough.
Yeah, I suppose it would be tough being on the road if you're in a relationship. So where's the next place you go from here? Obviously, you're going to the next promotion on May 21st. Where's the next international hop? You know what's happening there?
Yeah, July 31st, we're back in Sicily.
Wow.
And it's a town called Rossellini. It's absolutely amazing. It's, the little roads, and I'm driving around with my promoter friend over there, Bruno, and everybody's leaning out the windows. Ciao, Bruno! It's an amazing experience, and seeing these fighters welcome lion fight, that's what's really cool about this. And they just love it, and they do it upright. And then we're off to Scotland, and then we're back at Foxwood. So we've got, I think, 3 shows in 4 weeks in 3 countries. So I love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, Scotland is a great place. The people are amazing. Very hard to understand what they're saying if they've had a couple of beers, but Scotland is an amazing place. Wow, that's just such great. I mean, and now everything's opening back up again. I suppose all the opportunities will be happening. Speaking of opening back up, last weekend, let's just jump back onto the UFC for a second. Last weekend in Jacksonville, Florida, UFC 261 had its first open crowd event. I believe there was about 17,000 people there. Did you watch that fight?
Of course.
It was one of the best cards I've seen in a long time. Had a lot of amazing things happening throughout the fight. Obviously, the main event, Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal, ended in a vicious, vicious knockout in the first round. Were you shocked at that?
I was. I didn't think. I thought it would go the distance. I really did. And Usman, I thought he was starting to get wild. I think he was swinging. But that's the gamble when you go into something like that. But you know what he did? It was like, as a promoter, you've got 3 highlights right there with Valentina, with Rose, and with Usman.
Yeah.
They've all gone crazy viral. It's great for the sport. It's so good to see people back. And you could tell the fighters when they walked into the arena, it was just like,
even
their
Bruce
first
Buffer.
fight again.
Bruce Buffer was just like, I heard his voice sounded different. I mean, I know he puts in 100% every show, but his voice did sound different at this one. You mentioned Valentina Shevchenko against Jessica Andrade, that beautiful crucifix move, which is also devastating, very hard to get out of. Uriah Hall and Chris Weidman, we were talking a little bit earlier on about that before. I don't know if you guys actually saw that. When it happened, I heard the snap, and I'm not going to lie, it was very, very difficult to watch. Not only because it looked like a cartoon, it looked like a rubber leg, the way that the leg just folded back like that. How long does an injury like that take to... Do you ever come back from something like that?
Anderson Silva did.
Anderson Silva did, exactly.
Anderson Silva did. I think it really depends on the individual and their age. He's talking about coming back. I thought it was handled very professionally at every level. You hate to see that. The guy's trained for 10, 12 weeks, and the first, it wasn't even a punch thrown. It was the first move of the fight. And to snap a leg like that. And it wasn't just that. I think when he stepped back and stepped on it, I think that's what really put people over the edge. But, people don't realize how dangerous these sports are. These particular sports are. And same thing with Muay Thai. When you're dealing with, your goal is to cut somebody's head open with an elbow or to break a bone. And you look at, like our commentator, Nathan Corbett, 11-time world champion.
Absolute legend. Come on, Aussie, all the way from Hamilton, New Zealand, on the Gold Coast. 11-time world champion, Nathan Corbett.
Yeah, he's the man.
He is the man.
And he's, all of the fighters respect him. He'll give them advice. He's doing seminars all over the world now, and he's such a great ambassador for the sport. And we're so lucky to have him. And he's just such a good guy. But he's a fighter's fighter. He wants to take your head off. He's not looking to go in and outpoint somebody. He's not a point fighter.
Yeah.
You talk to him, and we get his input on a lot of fighters as well. Who do you think the next star is? What style do you like? And he's always like, I want to see somebody take somebody's head off. That's the way he grew up in that era.
Yeah.
And he wants to destroy you with the elbows and
crush your skull with those knees.
Yeah.
And when you say slash with the elbows, there's some people out there that are listening. And what do you mean slash with an elbow? Well, if you notice any of the real devastating moves in combat sports, the elbow has to be probably one of them because it can slice you open like an axe, right, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. And when these fighters are fighting in the clinch, same thing with these MMA fighters, they're so focused on the holds. Throwing an elbow up close when you're in a clinch like that. We've had some of the fighters throwing spinning back fists, spinning back elbows, and they're just devastating punches. And they're all highlight reels, and they don't work most of the time. But when they do, and you can cut a fighter, I think the fans enjoyed it. I think they like to see that.
Of course.
I think it has an effect on the judges. I think it has an effect on the injured fighter, and it's inspiration to the fighter that's done the damage.
Yeah, and I suppose psychologically, when a fighter gets hit with a elbow like that, and they see that blood, and they hear the reaction from the crowd, that's got to have some kind of mental effect on your performance, right, Scott?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things Nathan talks about is, the damage is inflicting your will on somebody.
Yeah.
And when you can focus on training, a lot of people throw elbows and it doesn't look like they know what they're doing. I think there's a habit sometimes it's like a spinning basket. Some guy will try it, 20 times in a fight, and it rarely works.
Right.
And they don't set it up or what have you. Same thing with the elbows. I think most fighters, especially those transitioning from kickboxing, they're not used to that. And I think that's where a Muay Thai fighter has a tremendous advantage when they're fighting in close to take advantage of the clinch itself and utilize the elbows. And you go back and you look at fights in Thailand, the minute they're in the clinch, they're setting up elbows and knees.
Yeah. And speaking of Thailand, as we were mentioning earlier on, Thailand is that place where this sport resonated, where it's the sport of the country. Everyone follows it. Little kids start doing it from the age of 6 years old. And they have these clubs and actually even bars over in Thailand where the average Joe can just go, can we get that? Let's get that clip set up, Ian. This is a little clip of my best friend over in Thailand, Mr. Daniel the Mush Mashford. And basically he was just sitting in a bar. They had a ring in there, and they offered people to come up onto the stage and show their skills. This is something that happens quite frequently over there. And as Scott was saying to me earlier on, you find some of the big stars of the business in this industry. Do you remember this, Scott? Is that something that you remember going to and seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. There were little kids that would come into the venue itself or the gym where we were training. So that's a proper gym. And there were little kids, 4 to 5 years old, that would come in and sweep up. And they would do it every day just for the idea that maybe they would be able to join the gym at some point.
Wow.
So, it's these guys are rock stars in Thailand.
Yeah.
The Yodson Klais, these guys that have really taken this sport to an international level. And for us to be able to bring a lot of these guys there. But, that's it. It's an evolution. It's getting American Muay Thai fighters to start at that age now and to really buy into what it is and how it is such an amazing sport. And I always tell fighters, go train in Thailand for 6 months. You'll learn more in 3 months and 6 months than you're going to learn in a lot of these gyms around the world in several years.
And you'll get to eat some good Thai food. You get to see a couple of good ping pong shows if you go over there.
The ping pong shows. Speaking of entertainment,
the lady boys.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh boy. No pun intended.
Oh boy. Right.
But Thailand is kind of like, so Australians always go to Thailand for vacation. It's like, how Americans go over to Mexico, Cabo for vacation. It's kind of the same thing for Australians because the food is unbelievable. The people are just magnificent. It's cheap over there. Yep. You can drink 50-cent Coronas on the beach while getting a massage, eating king prawns for $5.
Yeah.
Yeah. When was the last time you were there?
It's been a few years. I haven't gone back. We've been going to go back for the King's Cup the last couple of years, and it seems like we always end up doing fights at the end of the year. And, by the time you get it all sorted with travel and that, we've talked about doing fights in Thailand.
That would be great.
And we've got partners there that have really pushed us to do it in a couple of the major stadiums. And I think that's going to be one of the crowning jewels of the Lion Fight crown, down the road. Getting hooked up with the right promotion, the right folks on the ground there that can make this come off as a major international show.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, I mean, Lion Fight has definitely got an amazing reputation. You guys are going international. People know who you are over here in the United States. You've obviously got the thumbs up from Dana White and the UFC. What's the next vision? Like, where do we go now from here? Okay, we're here now. Pandemic's easing up a bit. What's next? What's the next big thing?
Well, I think the next thing for us is to look at show frequency. We've got a minimum 10-fight deal with Fight Pass this year. We might end up adding a couple fights to that. We've already had discussions about 22.
Yeah.
How many fights can we do? How many fights will they support? And, can we get them behind us as a promotion and saying, listen, there's a lot of MMA out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of big promotions. There's a lot of regional promotions. You have signed the biggest Muay Thai promotion in the world. world. Let's blow this thing up.
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's that element. I think just basic business moves that
Yep.
we need to do. You know,
Yeah.
our sponsorship base. We need
Yep.
to really focus on that, not just financially, but from a social media standpoint, which
Right.
is such a big part of the
Huge
business now. Yeah,
Huge.
absolutely.
Well, speaking of affiliates and speaking of sponsors, I don't know if you're a whiskey drinker, my friend. I don't know if you like to party every now and then. I don't know if you like to sit at home and have a couple of shots. But one of our amazing affiliates here is Proper 12 Irish Whiskey. Now, this is a whiskey that has been aged in barrels for about 4 years now. It is blowing up all over the world. It is the tastiest, the finest liquid gold on the planet. And Scott, what I'd like to do is for every guest that comes on the show, my good friend, Mr. Conor McGregor, always sends me over a couple of cases of the best whiskey in the world. So this is the part of the show which I call the passing of the proper. This is where I like to present my guests with a bottle. Have you had a bottle of this before?
I haven't, but we've done a couple of shows in Cork and a couple in Dublin, and everybody was talking about it.
Is that right? Well, I'm about to pop your cherry right now, Mr. Ken. That's weird if anyone's listening.
That's a little creepy. Yeah.
This is a bottle of Proper 12 Irish Whiskey.
Thank
this
you
is for
so
you, my
much.
friend. I want you to take that home and enjoy it, whether you give it to your friends or whatever. And you said you did Muay Thai. You've been training martial arts all your life. Do you have any injuries?
I have a lot, and I saw your other product here, and I'm thinking, boy, I could go through that in a hurry.
Okay, so
Yeah.
where are you sore?
It depends. The knees, knees and shoulders, back, things
Yeah.
like that. And it's just for years and years, the torque you put on your body.
Yeah.
Nathan's had a hip replacement.
Yeah.
Wayne Parr, these guys have had all kinds of hip issues.
Yeah.
And, Muay Thai fighters, that's one of the realities, not just Muay Thai fighters, but all
yeah.
athletes. As you get older, you're going to have these things which, 10 years ago didn't bother you. Now they're an issue.
Well, I mean, I want to hook you up with this as well. Literally, I broke my neck 2.5 years ago. I've tried everything. I've had surgeries, needles in the spine. I've got a titanium plate with 7 screws in my neck. I've tried like Icy Hot and Bengay, and nothing's worked. Nothing has worked until this. So I want you to take it home and try it, brother.
I appreciate it. Well,
Yeah.
I've got whiskey.
You've got-
and hemp-powered pain reliever.
And
I'm good.
if you try them together, it works even better.
I'll think I am Conor McGregor. Nice.
Yeah. So, well, man, first of all, thank you very much for coming on the show. Nathan Corbett, he's just an absolute legend in the sport. I'm glad you guys are affiliated. You're the first CEO that I've had a chance to talk to. First one really, well, actually, who did I speak to? Liam Harrison. I spoke to Liam Harrison. We had him on the podcast. He's another Muay Thai legend from back in the day and still kicking ass. What I like to do is towards the end of this podcast is that I like to get all my guests to maybe give a little bit of an inspirational sentence or word or something that they could say to someone that maybe someone that's thinking about starting their own promotion, maybe someone that's thinking about getting into Muay Thai. If you could give some kind of encouragement or words or words of advice that someone that wants to branch out and to be maybe someone like you.
Yeah, I think, one of the differences, and I think this is something, I talk about when I talk to young people. It's about confidence, and I used the analogy one time. I said, take a piece of paper and write down hope on one piece and then write belief on the other. And then take the one with hope and rip it up and throw it away because it doesn't do you any good. You got to have the belief, whether you're a fighter, whether you're going to be successful in business. Hope always seems to fall short. Belief is one of those things. I think that if you're really committed to something and you believe in whether it's a higher power or this is your destiny, nothing's going to stop you. And that would be my inspirational message to anybody out there, any young person, fighter, businessman, husband, wife, whatever it is. Just believe in yourself.
It's all mindset, right, Scott?
I think it is.
Yeah, it's all mindset. Well, there you go. If the CEO of one of the biggest Muay Thai promotions in the world can give you a bit of free advice, I'd take it. If you want to get tickets to any of these fights, we're going to leave all the information in the description right down the bottom of the podcast. If you want to drop a comment, if you need to find any more information about Scott or the Lion Fight promotions, we're going to have everything down there. Brother,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to get to one of your events.
Yeah, we'll hopefully be back in Vegas sometime soon. Check us out on UFC Fight Pass.
Yep.
it's an amazing show. And thank you so much for your time and continued success.
Well, I'm with you, brother, and thank you so much for your time and continued success. I want to thank our sponsors, Tidl Recovery Spray, Proper 12 Irish Whiskey, and of course, the Aussie Project Pies. Thanks for listening to us on all of our platforms and, of course, here on YouTube. Give it a share, a like, subscribe, drop a comment at the bottom. It means the world to me if you can help me, and I'm trying to get this going, and it's going really, really well. And without you guys, I wouldn't be here in this studio doing this. So I really do appreciate it. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ian, thank you very much. This is Marcus Deegan for the What Happens Here podcast. Love you guys.